This video is for the advisors out there who, at the moment, and even if they haven't admitted it to themselves, are feeling depressed. Now, there could be a whole range of reasons why you may feel this way, but at the moment, there's a pretty pivotal point in the financial advice space. And I'm going to make this video specifically for the financial advisors, although a lot of these concepts have translated over into the mortgage broking profession as well. So we've had the Royal Commission. And for a lot of advisors, the way that they were building their businesses, the way they saw their careers, how they were developing, their ideas, this vision of their future has really, in their minds, been impacted. A lot of advisors have had, they've gone and bought books of business, and I'll talk about that in a separate video. AMP and MLC and a lot of these institutions have sold on their books of business as a way to grow a financial planning firm. And those businesses have had commissions attached to them. And so there's businesses out there that have borrowed money, they've bought these books of revenue, they've perhaps discovered that they weren't able to actually speak to the clients because they've been called 5 times before or whatever. Or maybe they just haven't had a chance to transition them over to their new service and fee models. And yet now they're in a position where that revenue is disappearing. And they're also in a position where they're carrying the debt for that. And that's one of the things that I'm experiencing at the moment. And if you're in the financial advice world, then it would surprise you to understand exactly how many people are in this position. It's a lot. And some of them are what I would consider to be people who should be out of the advice space. They made bad decisions, and they made bad decisions with some less than stellar intent. But on the flip side, there are also some really good advisors who are in these positions that their focus was to build business model, to transition. And then you've got advisors who are sitting there going, you know what, I've been advising people for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and I really know what I'm doing, and I have a great impact for my clients. And yet now I'm going to have to go back and do more study. We've got advisors who are looking at the Royal Commission and going, well, the banks and the institutions cause most of these problems, and yet why has the focus not been on that? Why is the remedy actually going to hurt other people? Why are we having to make it harder to do business with clients because our compliance levels are going through the roof? All of these things are creating an impetus where what you thought was the status quo, what you thought was the future, is now being shifted. And what I want you to understand is that for almost all of us, when we have a fixed view, when we have fixed expectations, when we have a certainty of direction, when that direction is taken away, it can cause some pretty serious feelings. First of all, it's putting us in conflict with ourselves. We had this vision, we don't have it anymore, we now have a feeling of disempowerment. And so I'm finding that so many business owners in and around financial advice are in this space that I would call depressed. They're not working, they've got lethargy, they're procrastinating more on issues, they're feeling frustration, they're angry. And while they have a right, in a lot of cases, to be angry, the one thing I can say is that if you give up your power, if you give it up through your own feelings, if you give it up through your lack of direction, if you give it up through your frustration, the only thing that you do is disempower yourself. And I'm seeing this consistently. So what do you do about this? Are you an advisor who's in that space? Maybe you're someone who's in that space who is having these feelings that have lost your mojo, and it's got nothing to do with that. In my experience in having helped people move past these transition points throughout all of my adult life, I can tell you there's some pretty consistent patterns to this, and there's some consistent things that you need to do. First of all, the reason why advice is so valuable in the first place is because when you're in these emotional states, it's almost impossible to be objective about your situation. So the reason that I'm having these conversations, and the reason I'm, having Ryan, who I spoke to last week, and within 24 hours, he'd actually increased his revenue in his business by around about $15,000 within 24 hours. The reason is because he got advice, he got help. Now, this isn't a video about saying talk to me, because honestly, I couldn't speak to everyone who's in this position. You need to objectively look at your position. The reason why your clients find you so valuable is because you help them create context around their decisions. And the reason why we've got into this state is because the focus has been put on the wrong things. In order to change your feelings, in order to actually move past this feeling of being out of control, this feeling of frustration or anger, you have to actually sit back and forget the past. And I know that's a hard thing to say. The past is the past. Now is now. And in my experience, it helps if you actually get help with this. And advisors, as I would see it, are the businesses or the business owners or the professions that are least likely to go and seek advice. It's just one of those, rules. If you're an advisor, then, it puts us in a position of thinking that we have to be able to make choices for ourselves. We have to know the answers. Advice doesn't work that way. And so my first point to you is, as someone who's had all of my chips on the table and lined up and everything's going perfectly, and to have them come and knocked off and swept aside, revenue going from here to here overnight, as someone who's experienced those things multiple times in my life and my business career, I can say that the thing you have to do is to step back and be objective. Do you want to be an advisor? Forget whether you've got to do more education or not. To be honest, it's either the best time for you or it's the worst time. And that's always a choice. In order for you to get your mojo back, you need to actually get some clarity on your decisions and to make a choice. You can move past this. Just because you're losing a bunch of revenue doesn't mean you can't reinvent yourself and make a business 10 times better in the same amount of time because you make the decision to do so. But if you are fighting the past, if you're fighting yourself, if you're investing your emotion and your energy into anger, then you're disempowered. There's not a business that I've sat in front of where the person didn't reach a point where they took a step back, they looked at it objectively, where I couldn't say, you know what, here's your answers. But you have to be in a position where you're willing to accept those answers and you're willing to move past them. What worked in the past isn't going to work in the future. That doesn't mean you can't change it overnight. That doesn't mean you can't solve any of your problems. You can. Whatever you thought was possible is just this limitation in your own head. That's the reason why a lot of business I've worked with, we've said, okay, you came to us to get marketing help. Well, the problem isn't marketing. The problem is how you're charging, how you're articulating your value, the fact that you're not getting referrals. And within 9 months, we can, double profitability. Okay, so perhaps you're an advisor that's had some of your chips taken off the table. Maybe you're going to lose a whole bunch of revenue. Maybe you have to make hard decisions. Maybe you have to lay off team members. Maybe you have to actually go to your clients and have a confronting conversation, not for your clients, but for you, and say, you know what? I've been doing this all the time, but I didn't articulate the value well enough, and I sure as hell didn't actually charge you enough. And to be fair, that's the biggest challenge I see in the financial advice space. You don't understand your value well enough. You haven't been charging enough. So the Royal Commission hasn't changed that. All they've done is to remove the bit that was propping it up. If you're willing to evolve yourself, if you're willing to evolve your business, then in almost any situation, the best choice is going to be to double down. Actually make the change that you should. Take control. The answers are there. You just may need to get help to do it. It simply comes down to this. Whenever we get our view of the world knocked, when we get it changed, it's easy to be the victim. And it's easy to disempower yourself. And I've been there. I've felt those feelings of lethargy and depression and anger and frustration. And as someone who deeply believes in the advice profession, I've even found it challenging watching some of the things unfold, even though I knew to a degree they were coming. Not in exactly what form. I've been saying this for a decade. We have to evolve. So my point for you all is, if you feel like your mojo's not there, you can actually do something about it. You can take an objective look. Maybe the first thing you need to do is just get some objective help. So if you're in this position, just remember, the past is the past. It just created variables for you. Look at it fresh. Take control of where you're going. And if you want to reach out to speak to someone, then please send me a message. I may not be able to speak to you directly, but I've been talking to a whole group of people in this space because I know this is a period where we really need to double down on supporting advice and to supporting people around this. So I look forward to chatting to you if that's the case. I look forward to being a part of this. Please let me know your thoughts. Let me know your ideas. Where are you at? How are you feeling? I think the best thing we can do at this point in time is actually bring it out into the public, because at the moment there's a lot of people out there that are feeling this way and they're just doing it on their own. Thanks very much. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.